then. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne. What's going on, Dwayne?
Not too much, man. Playoffs. Hockey's returning tomorrow. Basketball in a couple weeks. Football's in full swing. October's the best month of the year. Let's go.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. As you know, this is Know the Score. We can be found on CSPN.us on the web. We can also be found on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. Dwayne, going to start off with college football this week as
hmm
the biggest game of the week took place in Happy Valley. But unfortunately, the fans of Penn State went home sad. They were happy for most of the game, but Dwayne Haskins throws two fourth quarter touchdowns to lead Ohio State past Penn State 27-26 in Happy Valley. So Ohio State really, measured up to the test. It didn't look good early on, really through 3.5 quarters, but the Penn State defense folded a little bit and the offense fell off. And that gave Dwayne Haskins just a little bit of an opening that he needed, and he cashed it in. So this moves Penn State up in the rankings big time. So now they're going to be, I think, number 2 behind Alabama. So just your analysis, what you saw of this game. This is a really good game. I mean, it sucks that Penn State lost because their quarterback really put on a show. We said that their quarterback and their receivers would be the ones to keep them in the game, and he definitely McSorley. He definitely was doing his thing, but he fell just short.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Penn State, and it's not even the fact that they faltered; they just straight collapsed. And the sad part about it is, it's one of those things where this isn't the first time this has happened. In the last three games in the series on both sides, really, Penn State the last 2 years, including this one, they've had double-digit lead in the fourth, and they could not hold on to it. So it's a very tough loss for the Nittany Lions. A great win for the Buckeyes. When you find a way to win, you take advantage of it. Haskins balled out in the fourth quarter. Very composed in the fourth, very cool, and just shows that as long as you have a good signal caller, someone who's able to make the big plays under pressure situations. I mean, hostile environment, over 100,000 in a whiteout, and you're able to not only engineer one fourth quarter drive, but two to put them in head for good. It's pretty remarkable.
We'll shift the scene up to Syracuse, where Clemson had to hold on, come from behind to beat Syracuse 27-23. Trevor Lawrence suffers a concussion in his first career start, but the third stringer, Travis, I can't even say his last name. Is that Inete?
I think so. I'm gonna check.
Yeah, I haven't heard it pronounced, but yeah, the third string quarterback comes off the bench, leads the drive, gets Clemson ahead. The defense holds up for him. So, man, it's just funny how things work. The irony of these situations where Kelly Bryant says, "I'm out because Trevor Lawrence took my starting job," and bam, he gets hit, and now they're down to their third string quarterback. So Syracuse really put up a great effort. Clemson dodges a bullet. This has kind of been a bugaboo place for them the past couple of years, but they escaped this time. So I know Dabo is just wiping his forehead. But what did you think about the effort that Syracuse gave? And they're maybe turning their program around up there.
Definitely. I mean, Syracuse is one of the Syracuse is definitely one of those teams that is a program to watch. They're a program on the rise. They're a program that has been given a lot of these um, higher ACC teams a run for their money, and I think in a few years, and maybe even sooner, this team is going to be back to prominence, back to where they were in the days of McNabb. So um, very very impressive. We've seen Syracuse give Florida State a scare. We've seen them give Miami several scares over the years. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and so it's going to be the Carrier Dome's going to be more than just a basketball venue once again. It's going to be a nice little. It's going to have a good football atmosphere once again as well. Shout out to Syracuse. I think had they had just a little more experience, they probably would have been able to pull off this win. But very ironic situation, with the whole Kelly Bryant situation, and Trevor Lawrence gets hurt after getting the job, and it's kind of like, hey, Kelly, you want to come back? It's like, yeah, about that now. So I don't think Kelly Bryant would even want to come back under those circumstances. You always hate to come in, at somebody else's expense due to an injury. You want to kind of outperform them and earn the job. But the third string quarterback for Clemson, he did what he had to do in terms of getting the win for this team and for this program, keep them in the hunt for the college football playoff and for the national title picture. But what's going to happen on the road, I don't know. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens in that regard there.
We'll shift the scene over to South Bend, Indiana, where Ian Brooks throws 4 touchdowns. Notre Dame's defense only allows 3 second-half points, and the Irish defeat Stanford 38-17. This Notre Dame team might be for real. That defense is pretty good. Bryce Love got, a long touchdown run, and then they made another drive to tie it up at 14. And then after that, man, Notre Dame just went on a streak. So I know you're not really fond of Notre Dame and, what they got going on for the, with their coach and everything, but I think they might be a real player this year if they don't, have one of these games where they get too full of themselves and slip up.
I definitely have to agree with you, and yeah, this isn't what I envisioned, but it is what it is. And Notre Dame's just a good football team. Now, this defense at Notre Dame's is pretty stout, pretty formidable, and then now you got the offense complementing the defense complementing the offense. Really, I think for a long time it was the other way around, but now you got the both sides of the ball playing very well, and I gotta agree with you, Don. Even though I'm not the fondest of Notre Dame supporters, or let's just be real, I do not like them, but I do respect the fact that they got it going on. Credit is due to what Brian Kelly is doing. I really did not think he would be able to continue to get the job done, but he has. So we'll just have to see how the rest of the season plays out and if they can end up cracking the top 4. But they've played some tough squads and they beat them all, so they're passing the test. And eventually you got to move these guys up into the top 4.
Next up, we'll talk about Will Grier, 3 touchdown passes as he leads West Virginia narrowly past Texas Tech 42-34. It was actually a 1-score game there. It was a little bit farther out than it actually seemed at the end because Texas Tech made a rally there, but the damage was done early in the first half and the first quarter. Really, West Virginia jumped out and Texas Tech was playing catch up for the rest of the game. So Will Greer, I don't know. He could be the next product of, just a great offense where, they're just taking advantage of people who can't run with these guys. Or is he really somebody that you could look at and at the next level, because this is going to be his last year in college? Do you think that he can maybe be a number one pick type of guy?
Well, I've been following Will Greer since his days in Charlotte, in the high school scene in Charlotte. So even when he was at Florida, he was a very effective quarterback before he got into the ordeals he went through. But he's learned from it, and even though West Virginia is one of those offensive juggernauts, well, every team in the Big 12, except for a couple squads, seem to be an offensive juggernaut anyway. But I do think that he is a good player, a good quarterback. He may not be like a first or second round pick, but he might have a good, solid career as a backup, or he might even flourish in someone's training camp and earn the starting job. Just depends on what system he gets into in the pros, but I definitely have been a fan of Will Greer's. I've been able to, see him in person a couple times, and then, but seeing him go do what he's doing at West Virginia has been a remarkable thing. I did say at the start of the season, West Virginia would be one of those teams in the Big 12 to watch out for, and right now they're proving it. Of course, I think towards the end of the season they got the true test when they got to play the Oklahomas, the TCUs, and the Texas squads towards the end of the season. So as long as they don't slip up along the way, they should be in that mix as well. They're already in the top 10. They cracked the top 10 now, so we'll see what happens from there.
I'll just make this quick point about Will Greer and his future at the next level. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't flame out in the second half of this NFL season, you're going to see a whole bunch of teams be like, okay, let's go get us one of these air raid quarterbacks, because Goff is starting to do his thing, and you see more and more people starting to embrace the spread. Like Andy Reid has kind of figured it out, like, oh yeah, since they play this way in college, let's just figure out how to make it work here in the NFL. And he doesn't have to learn as much, and he can be good a lot faster.
Agreed. And I think also, and that was a big adjustment for Andy Reid. I mean, you got to think about it. He's been a West Coast guy for over almost 30 years. So, but I think also he started to air it out a little bit with Alex Smith because of the weapons he has. And I think now you got an air raid quarterback, the spread offense that Mahomes is used to. Plus, you got a whole lot of speed with Hill and Watkins. So, yeah, and then these kind of quarterbacks and even Trubisky. I mean, look what Trubisky did this Sunday, and we're going to talk about it later on, I hope. But that's definitely could be the trend of the next level. A lot of people might be looking at Big 12 quarterbacks a lot more. Not just Will Greer, but Kyler Murray, if Kyler Murray doesn't decide to play baseball, from Oklahoma. That's definitely someone to look out for. And yeah, it's definitely something I could definitely see trending. And then we go from there. So
this is Know the Score. I'm the host, Don Delarente, and I'm here with my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne. We just wrapped up what happened last week in college football. So now we're going to talk about what's coming up as top 25 matchups. We only have 3 this week, but we get some rivalry games to start off as we have number 19, Texas, headed into the Red River rivalry against number 7, Oklahoma. So you were talking about Kyler Murray. He's going to get a chance to go against this, it looks to be new and improved Texas defense. But I mean, he's been putting, NCAA college football numbers on people. That's Kyler Murray, that is. They scored 66 points in the game that he didn't even start because he had some quote unquote discipline issues. But kind of forecasting this, Texas has won 4 in a row now as they won again last week. So, they're feeling good about themselves. Oklahoma's undefeated. They just laid a whooping on Baylor, 66-33. So, this is going to be, 2 teams that are riding pretty high coming in. Rivalry game, of course, Texas State Fair. Let me know what you feel about Oklahoma's chances to remain undefeated, or does Texas, Tom Herman establish himself right here in this game?
Well, I think Tom Herman's going to have to wait one more year in this rivalry. I think Oklahoma will win this game. I just love the game of Kyler Murray, and I love the ability for him to not just run with the ball, but get the ball down the field. Texas has had some really good games as of late. They put together a very good string of games as of late in the last few weeks, but I think reality's going to set in a little bit for them, and things will just have to wait one more year before I think Texas kind of turns the tide in the rivalry. But you never know if they can contain those receivers and force Kyler to run more than pass and this game, obviously, then Texas will have a chance to win. But I think Oklahoma's got too much on offense to overwhelm. That's going to overwhelm that defense.
Our next top 25 matchup has number 5 LSU, quietly number 5 LSU, going into the swamp to face number 22 Florida. So, like I said, LSU's been kind of under the radar. They're getting some good quarterback play. They're running the ball, and of course, we know what they do on defense. Florida's rejuvenated here with Dan Mullen. He won the Dan Mullen Bowl last week against Mississippi State. So, they're feeling good about themselves. So, can Florida use the home crowd and, Dan Mullen's creativity on offense to maybe do some trickeration and get past LSU?
I think LSU is going to go for a Florida sweep. They already beat Miami earlier in the season in Texas, and they're going to go to the swamp and get a road win against Florida. I wasn't really too high on LSU. I wasn't too high on LSU before, but I definitely am now. They made me a believer in the first week of the season against Miami. So I definitely think LSU can get the W and going forward.
Our final top 25 matchup comes from Blacksburg, Virginia, as number 6 Notre Dame will travel up to number 24 Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech bounced back last week against Duke. You knew they would after getting embarrassed and, kind of caught off guard by Old Dominion. So, Notre Dame's going to get a chance to put that defense to the test on the road. Ian Brook is going to have to try to, navigate that hostile environment and that crowd. So do you think Notre Dame can come out of Blacksburg unscathed, or does Virginia Tech put together 2 good games in a row?
That's a good question. So I think that I've been against Notre Dame the last few weeks. I'm going to go with Notre Dame this time. Um, if you can't beat them, join them. I guess that's my logic for the week here. So, and quite frankly, yeah, I can't trust Virginia Tech probably for the rest of the season, even if they were to run the table. I mean, he lost to Old Dominion. That kind of just doesn't sit well with me personally. But let's just say that Notre Dame, they've proven themselves. They've had a lot more quality matchups than Virginia Tech. I think that pays off.
All right. So, that was a college football wrap up. Now we're going to shift the scene over to Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball playoffs. But before we could get to the playoffs, something very, very rare and interesting happened. We had two game 163s as the Brewers and the Cubs faced off in their tiebreaker game for the NL Central, and the Dodgers and Rockies also faced off in a tiebreaker game to determine the champion of the National League West. So the Brewers, behind likely MVP, almost Triple Crown winner Christian Yelich, defeated the Cubs in their tiebreaker game to win the NL Central. The Dodgers jumped out early at home and they defeated the Rockies to win the NL West. So that sets up the Rockies versus the Cubs in the NL wildcard matchup. So both teams are coming into this game, the Rockies and Cubs, coming off losses, but they still get to play another day. So they're in playoff mode. So, unfortunately, what happens in these type of games are you're going to have like relievers and kind of end of the rotation guys starting, and you're probably not going to see the best pitched game, but you might see a lot of offense. So it's in Chicago late in the year here. I don't know if it's gotten cold in Chicago or how the wind's going to blow. But if you had to take a guess, one game on the line, Rockies versus the Cubs, who are you going with, Dwayne? Who you got?
Do you want my fan pick or my journalist pick?
Man, you do both, whatever you like. However you answer, that's up to you.
All right, so let's first. I already well, because the Rockies were playing the Dodgers, I jumped on the Rockies bandwagon. Wanted them to win the NL West, so I had to be in this 1 day situation. And in the perfect world, it would have been nice if the Dodgers and Cubs would just have one game to play off, and the loser goes home. But it is what it is. So the Cubs are going with John Lester tonight um, to start this game. So they're putting all their marbles in John Lester's hands, and so and in this situation, you do want to put the ace in here, and then you got Kyle Freeland on the other side for the Rockies, and I'm going to say this: it's going to be one of those games where it's going to come down to hitting. I think the pitching is going to be well. I think the winds in Chicago might make the ball fly out a little bit more, or carry carry some of these fly balls out the park. It would be nice to see that, but um, I want to say I want the Rockies to win. But I think the Cubs, because of the experience, I think Lester is the better pitcher out of the two. And and usually in October you got to have phenomenal pitching, and I think he fits that bill. But I do hope the Rockies win. It's always good to see somebody um, newer in the playoffs. I mean, yeah, we were all for the Cubs when they won 2 years ago because they ended that historically long drought. But it's always good to see somebody else win. It's good to see the Astros win last year. It'd be good to see somebody else, keep that variety going.
A really sneaky thing is that game yesterday was actually played in Chicago, so the Cubs don't have to travel anywhere. The Rockies had to play in LA, so then they had to leave that game and then fly to Chicago to play this NL wild card game. So the travel situation may actually be more the thing that the Rockies fight more than the actual Cubs on the field. So I don't know how much juice they're going to have in the early innings of this game, but we'll see. Over in the American League, the American League wild card game pits the Yankees, who had some injuries, towards the second half of the season, especially to Aaron Judge. He missed a lot of the second half. Their pitching, suffered some injuries as well, going against the upstart Oakland A's behind home run leader Chris Davis. Another scrappy bunch of young kids who, just played hard, didn't start well, but that's not how you start, it's how you finish in baseball. They've got the home field advantage against these Yankees. So, can the Oakland A's, shout out to Nick Jew, continue this summer of just, we're not supposed to be here, but since we are here, we're just going to continue to party?
Well, this game's actually at Yankee Stadium.
That's at Yankees?
Yeah, it's at Yankee Stadium.
Hmm.
So I want to, but I'm going to root for the A's in this one. Anybody knows? I mean, I'm a Mets fan, so by default, I'm going for the A's in this one. Um, no pinstripe pride over here. So, but I think the A's are that scrappy bunch. The Yankees, they showed up pretty early last year when they had that 7-game war against the Astros in the ALCS a year ago, and they are getting healthy at the right time. Um, I just think that I don't know how healthy they actually are in order to pull this game off. So I want to go with the A's on this one, only because I don't like the Yankees, and B, anytime anytime you got um, one of the top home run hitters in the league in a home run hitting park, that's definitely a something that I want to watch, and hopefully we can see. But nothing like October baseball, wherever these places are, whether it's Wrigley, whether it's Yankee Stadium. Um, it's always fun to see these crowds and see these players put on live, especially the wild card game. I mean, some people aren't a fan of it. I like it, only because you see so much be put on the line for one game because it's all about survival.
I'm in the minority. I'm in the camp that wants it just to be a series. Make it a 3-game series, man. Just, baseball's meant to be played days in a row, not just one game, only in game 7. So I just don't like the fact that it's just like bam, like here we go, one game. Like, that's not how we play baseball all season, but okay. It adds a lot of drama to it, but they could work it out where they could, make more money if they wanted to, but I guess they haven't come to that realization yet. Now, sitting at home awaiting the winner of the wild card games, we have the Brewers, who will await the winners of the Rockies and the Cubs matchup in the National League. And we have the Red Sox, who will await the winner of the Yankees and the A's wild card game in the American League. So that puts those two teams basically as your number one seeds in this year's MLB playoffs. Do you think the Brewers and the Red Sox will match up in this year's World Series?
No, I think one team will be there, and it's the Boston Red Sox. I think the Brewers are going to be there. They're going to go to LCS maybe, but they're going to probably be ousted by the Dodgers.
So you've alluded to the Dodgers. They're going to be facing off against the Atlanta Braves. So the Atlanta Braves are back in the playoffs for the first time in many, many years. The upstart Ronald Acuna Jr., the pitching staff, Freddie Freeman, Ozzy, what's his name? What's his last name?
Albies.
Yeah, that's my man, little guy. They've got the Braves back in the playoffs against the Dodgers, who, a lot of people figured would have a much better season, but, they had some injuries, and so they've kind of limped their way into the playoffs, but they're here. They survived the National League West this year. So you already said that you feel like the Dodgers are going to move on in this series. And in the American League, we have the Indians, who've been on cruise control pretty much since the quarter pole of the season, facing off against last year's defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros. So the Astros have suffered some injuries in the second half of the season to some of their bats in the lineup. The Indians, like I said, they haven't really played a meaningful baseball game since before the All-Star break. So I don't really know how battle tested they truly are. So give me your temperature on the Indians and the Astros. Who do you think is going to come out victorious in that series?
So last two ALCS winners. And yeah, because the AL Central was pretty much awful. It was a cakewalk for the Indians. But I think the Astros are a little more battle tested. And, it's going to be more rest versus rust for the Indians. And we'll just have to see how that goes. I think the Astros and Sox are going to play. And I think the Sox are going to escape out of that ALCS.
All right. This episode of Know the Score is being brought to you by Patreon.com, specifically www.patreon.com/CSPN Media. Go over to our Patreon page, become a backstage member, and gain access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and more from all of your favorite podcasts here on the CSPN. So if you're into NASCAR, I got some really cool footage up, my video interview with Ross Chastain. I've also got some very candid interview footage of Dale Earnhardt Jr. fresh out of the car after he got done with all the television interviews. He gave, us little peons an interview there on pit road, and, some really interesting comments from him. So go ahead over to patreon.com/CSPN Media. Become a CSPN Backstage member, gain access to that, support the podcast, become a CSPN patron, and we'll greatly appreciate your support. So now it's time to talk about the National Football League, and we'll start off with the Thursday night game, one of the best Thursday had since they've started this little, venture, more than about 4 years ago now, it seems like, where we had Jared Goff and the Rams outduel Kirk Cousins and the Vikings 38-31. Both quarterbacks over 400 yards, no interceptions. But again, Kirk Cousins fumbles in the pocket in the crucial moments with a quick rush by the Rams defensive line, and that decided the game. So this was a coming out party for Jared Goff, Sean McVay, the Rams offense. The defense really didn't show a lot, but they came up big when they had to. So now, does this squarely put the spotlight on the St. Louis Rams? I'm old school. On the Los Angeles Rams, got to get even more old school, as the team to beat in the NFL this year?
It does. This team is a juggernaut, and it's going to be. They're going to be one tough out in the playoffs. The only team in the NFC West that has a remote chance of competing with them are the Seattle Seahawks, but we'll know how that's going to go considering the state of their defense and the offense that's not really all that great, not like really impressing anybody, especially their lack of run game. But the Rams, they got complete support on all sides of the ball. You got Jared Goff launching the ball all over the field. You got Todd Gurley, who's a touchdown machine. Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, uh, Tyler Higbee at tight end. A great offensive line, which allows all these plays to happen. And even though the defense wasn't all that great this week with against the Vikings, it's still got a lot of big names there, and so yeah, I think the Rams are the heavy favorite. They've proven it time and time again. Um, that first playoff loss last year to the Falcons kind of woke them up a little bit. So it's like, what are we gonna do to improve this team? And they're well on their way to um, great success, barring any injuries.
I've gone on record on this show a lot of times and said that Sean McVay will go down in the Washington football team's lore and history as the coach that got away. That's the guy right there, man. He is so good. He was the man behind Kirk Cousins. Now he's the man behind Jared Goff. And, he's the head coach now, and he's getting to do everything he wants to do. And he may be the next, Bill Walsh for this generation of coaches because he's so young and he's so innovative. And he's got a quarterback right now that he's in tune with. I don't know how long they're going to have him or how long they're going to be able to kind of keep this up because the quarterback's on a team-friendly deal. But when the quarterback wants to get paid and he has to do this with not as much help on defense or not a good offensive line or, aging Todd Gurley, we'll really see how good his coaching really is. But right now, while these boys are in their prime, yeah, Sean McVay is him and Andy Reid may make for a very interesting Super Bowl if this all plays out to those two teams matching up.
Absolutely, it would be a good it'll be a good former I-70 Bowl.
It'll be like a college football game, and that may actually be the best thing that ever happened to A, the quarterbacks in college, and B, the product, quote unquote, on the field.
Agreed, and might as well just make it a 7-on-7 kind of game. So be one of those games. So whoever has the last position might likely be coming out as the winner at one of the biggest games and the ultimate prize.
Speaking of pulling it out, the team who has the ball with the last possession, the Cincinnati Bengals get a late touchdown pass from my man, the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton to AJ Green. Thank you for the fancy points to give the Falcons their second straight loss in heartbreaking fashion. Of course, they lost to the Saints at home when Drew Brees got them, in overtime when they drove down and he got the touchdown over the top. So the Bengals, they bounced back from that loss to Carolina the week before, and they send the Falcons on a skid. I think they're 1-3. They're not really looking good on defense at all. And I know that makes you feel good because the team that you root for had a bye week, so they gained actually position without even, playing the game. So,
right.
First of all, just talk about, the Bengals look like that they actually may be the class of their division this year. We're going to talk about what's going on with the Steelers. They're struggling a little bit. But, first the Bengals, what they're doing and how you feel about them, and then you can get more into the Falcons.
Well, I mean, first off, the Bengals did get a serious blow when Tyler Eifert went down with a broken ankle, done for the season. And then I really do like the Bengals. They hung in there with Carolina, but they kind of got caught in that front seven kind of got to Andy Dalton a lot, was forced to throw a couple interceptions. Well, four of them, two of them were really more in garbage time. But the, this game here, I mean, you had a lot. It was really coming down to who got the ball last, and Andy Dalton had more time on the clock, and he made the most of it. And you got AJ Green, you got Tyler Boyd. Looks like Gio Bernard is holding down that running back spot until Joe Mixon comes back. Um, yeah, if as long as they don't beat themselves, the Bengals are really the class of the NFC North. I mean, still got to worry about the Baltimore Ravens. They still look like a team on the rebound from a disappointing season a year ago. We'll touch on the Steelers and the Browns in a little bit, but if I really comes down to it, unless the Steelers get it together, it's a race. I think it's going to come down to the Bengals and Ravens dueling out for the AFC North. On the Falcons side of things, they've had a lot of injuries, and it's really starting to mount up. And that's one of the things that kind of plagued the Panthers a little bit. They had injuries, but they didn't have the depth to make up for it. And right now, like they've lost two safeties. They lost their nose tackle, lost one of their top pass rushers, um, and their top running back is out too, Freeman. And so they're really a bad Carolina Panthers game away from 0-4. If we really want to be frank about it, the Panthers probably had their worst game of the season. Of the three games they played before their bye week, the worst game was against the Falcons, where they had the lead, but they coughed it up and let Tevin Coleman and Ito Smith just gash them on the ground. And even though Calvin Ridley's having a breakout party right now, it's like one of the bright spots in this low light situation. But at 1-3, looking up at the rest of the division, and they lost the tiebreaker with New Orleans, so it's virtually a 3-game. They're trailing the division by 3 games. It's not looking good for um, the Birds and ATL.
Next up, we'll shift the scene over to Mitchell Trubisky. He throws for 6 touchdown passes. That's obviously a career high in his second NFL career year in the NFL, excuse me. As the Bears also made you smile as they defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Dwayne, 48-10. Mitchell Trubisky has 5 touchdowns in the first half. Count them, 5 in the first half. Nagy really did a number on them with Tariq Cohen kind of in the Tariq Hill role. And this really looked a lot like Kansas City North.
Absolutely. And this is what I was trying to tell people about the Chicago Bears. Didn't I say this, Don? Did I not say this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Jade. How you doing? But no, seriously. I knew once they got a offensive minded coach, Trubisky would begin to develop into a better quarterback. And he got out the clutches of the purgatory known as John Fox. You get the offense. This is really what can happen on a weekly basis if if the chips fall as they may. We could have a Kansas City North, absolutely. And let's not just say it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because the Buccaneers have had some good defensive moments prior to this game, and they came into and won. And so this is definitely what this team was looking for when they drafted Trubisky, when they hired Nagy. This is what they wanted. And now the Bears are at 3-1, first place in the NFC North by the widest of margins right now, because everybody else in the division is below 500. So, um, shout out to the Bears. And even you got an MVP in Khalil Mack. So, this team is really a team to watch out for. If they can keep it up, they might run away with the NFC North.
Speaking of running away, we'll talk about briefly the Patriots dismantled the Dolphins 38-7. Moving on. The Browns, they were on the wrong end of two calls, and they're 45-42 loss in overtime. So the Raiders, oh man, talk about the replay doing you in when it's supposed to actually confirm what you saw. The Browns had looked like a scoop and score off a fumble, reversed by replay, and then what looked like a clear first down at the end of the game in the 2-minute warning that would basically, allow them to take some knees and run the clock out, gets called a first down on the field. Then the replay booth reverses the spot. The Browns kick field goal. The next thing you know, the Raiders go down with no timeouts, 2 minutes to go, get a touchdown, 2-point conversion. We have overtime, and then we get the Raiders kicking a field goal to win in overtime. So the Browns literally are like, a handful, 4 or 5 plays away from being 4-0 this year. But instead, the Raiders and John Gruden gets his first win in 10 years or more as a head coach in the NFL. So, Dwayne, just, talk about the craziness and how you perceived what happened to the Browns in this game. One call is bad, but man, 2 calls, that's just incredible to happen to one team.
And out of all the teams that it happens to, it just would have to be the Cleveland Browns. And when it comes to bad luck, that's so Cleveland. That's really what it boils down to. If it wouldn't happen to any other team but the Cleveland Browns. And all this bad luck would not happen to any other team but the Cleveland Browns. It's astounding that this team is a missed field goal, a couple missed field goals, a couple missed extra points, 2 replay calls. Yeah, like I said, a handful of incidents from being 4-0. Any other team would be 4-0 right about now, but because it's the Cleveland Browns, they're stuck at 1-2-1, and I don't know how this is. It's got to take a toll on, the staff, the front office, the fans. It's you got to wonder how do you deal with this kind of adversity, but it's one of those things, and I'm trying to do the math here. I think Hugh Jackson is now 2-33-1 in this era as the Browns head coach. Because I want to say 1-15, 0-16, and then 1-2-1. Yeah, 2-33-1, and in all actuality, he should at least be 5-31 at this point. So, it's those calls just boil down to the fact that it's just the hard luck of the Cleveland Browns, and when will it end? Nobody knows, but the football gods themselves.
Sunday Night Football brought us the Ravens and the Steelers, AFC North battle. Always a hard-hitting affair. Joe Flacco jumped out early with 2 touchdown passes to give the Ravens an early lead. They never looked back. They beat the Steelers 26-14. Ben Roethlisberger, he was pretty pedestrian in this game. He's having a hard time getting the ball out to all those weapons that they've got. Pittsburgh's defense, their secondary especially, has a lot of holes and a lot of cracks in it that people are starting to expose because you can throw deep on Pittsburgh, and that people are really challenging them. So the Ravens and Joe Flacco look like that they're poised to make a run this year. I know you already said that you think the AFC North may come down to the Ravens and the Bengals. So we'll focus on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we seeing the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era finally right before our eyes?
I would say at this very moment, yes. But with Le'Veon Bell coming back, it may not be over just yet. It might have a last stand of Roethlisberger, but as much as James Conner has done, I love the story, love the fight this kid has. He's just not the dynamic back that Le'Veon Bell is, and it's really apparent how much he's missed on that team. And Cam, at the end of the day, it sucks for his teammates that they're going out here each week and performing, and he's at home. But you also got to figure he's also protecting himself. Well, we'll touch on that in just a moment anyway. But back to the Big Ben thing. It probably might be the end of an era. I mean, we've been saying that he's been a lot slower. We've seen the injuries pile up over the years, but now that they're virtually one-dimensional on offense, it's not as productive as they once were, and you got guys who are not running the ball as effectively. I mean, Connor had a good week 1, but what has he done since? Where's Stephen Ridley, who's supposed to be the backup? We just don't know what is being brought to the table right now, and once a certain somebody comes back, we'll see if this Steeler team can rally and go to the postseason.
We'll wrap it up with the NFL review with Monday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes, the legend continues. He erased a 10-point fourth quarter deficit to lead the Chiefs over the Broncos in Mile High, 27-23. So, he got harassed. Von Miller got him to the ground a couple of times. He was running for his life a few times. But when you put the money on the table, Patrick Mahomes came up with the aces and he led them back. Very impressive. That was a game that you thought that maybe, 10-point lead, fourth quarter, that defense at home, that the storybook start was going to end, but it didn't. So, what does this say for Patrick Mahomes going forward, man? I mean, it looks like the sky's the limit for this kid. He could be Rookie of the Year, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. All the trophies could be his.
Absolutely. I mean, this what he's done. He's already, created quite a resume. He's already rewritten the record books early on, and in this first quarter of the season, he definitely will be the MVP of the league. He would definitely rack up these awards and everything. I just think that one of those things is kind of like, how long can he sustain this? Can he sustain this all season long? When's the bad game going to happen? Who's it going to come up against? But let's just enjoy the ride for what it's worth right now. It's very, very entertaining. The Chiefs are having fun. This Kansas City's having fun. Andy Reid is, rejuvenated as a coach. This has been a great story, and you just want it to continue, and he just lets the play do his talking, and go from there. So shout out to Patrick Mahomes. Looked like Denver was going to be the team to knock off Kansas City. They played a very well game. Can only imagine what would have happened if that hook and lateral would have worked at the end of the game. But um, you know, rivalry game between two AFC West foes, and it came down to the very end, and just got to give the Chiefs a lot of credit and a great win for them.
We'll turn to some NFL news. Unfortunately, this is mostly the injury report on this part of the show, as Earl Thomas fractured his leg again in a win over Arizona. Of course, Earl Thomas has been, very vocal about not wanting to put his body at risk for the, playing of football without more years guaranteed on his contract and getting a larger sum of money to do so. So, there had been a lot of talk about him missing practices and why he was missing practices. And he was basically saying, hey, I'm trying to save the wear and tear on my body, less risk for injuries, not take this unnecessary pounding during the week so I can be fresh for the game because, I still ain't got no contract after this year. And then the very next game, man, he fractures his leg. So he let everybody know how he felt about that as he flipped the Seattle sideline to Bird, mostly Pete Carroll, because that's the man who's holding his money. So it looks like with this injury right here, we already knew that it was, near the closing scene, but this is officially the credits on the Legion of Boom era of the Seattle Seahawks. So, talk about Earl Thomas's impact, just, what he meant to Seattle, what he's meant for that position that he played, and, how he revolutionized what a cover 3 defense could be and look like.
One of the best, and this is definitely one of the best Seahawks ever put on that uniform for that franchise. Grand opening, grand close. It's grand closing on this era, this defense as we know it. Sherman gone, Browner gone, Maxwell gone. He might have came back, but he's not the same. Chancellor gone. Yeah, Earl Thomas definitely, redefined the free safety position, especially in that formation, and he wanted to be invested in. He did. It's not the fact that he wanted to leave Seattle. He wanted a longer deal that the Seahawks were not willing to give him, and they wanted to trade that he never got. And then this happens, and it's really bad when a player tries to invest in himself and bet on invest in himself, wants to be paid what he's worth, and he's not getting that compensation. It's understandable why he would want to take not risk his body as much as he would. I mean, if you're going to pay him what he's worth, then he'll go full speed ahead. We've seen that over the years when he played out his contract, and we've seen that over the years when he was always on the injury report because of the style of play that he had. But even when he protected himself, this happened, and it's very unfortunate. And I don't blame him for flipping the bird to Carroll in the Seattle bench, because this is what happens when you don't invest in somebody.
Rob Gronkowski left the game versus the Dolphins with a bad ankle. So we'll see what he looks like later on this week when they begin practice again, what his status will look like for their next game coming up, which is a short week for them. They play the Thursday night game, so Gronk may be out of this one if that ankle's too bad. Like you talked about earlier, Tyler Eifert, he suffered a broken ankle. This is the third season in a row that he suffered a season-ending injury. So I don't know if he's going to try to come back after this one again. This may be a career for him. But that's just unfortunate for him. They did everything they could to try to, prevent his wear and tear as well through training camp and practices, and still, something like this happens for him. So hopefully he recovers and, just has a good quality of life going forward. And the big bombshell that dropped was that Le'Veon Bell says that he plans to report to the Steelers around week 7, week 8, conveniently right around the bye week. So pick up a check for not really, doing anything. Hey, that's the American way. And then, get yourself set. Gives him 2 weeks to kind of, get back into the playbook and the schemes and everything like that. So talk about Le'Veon Bell. He looks like that, he's no fool. He's gonna come in there, get his tender, sign his tender for the franchise player, collect his wages and for half a season, and then move on to free agency where he hopes to cash in. So how does this, one, affect the Steelers on the field, and B, how does this affect Le'Veon Bell in negotiations going forward?
Well, it affects the Steelers because they got their star running back back. They become less one-dimensional, and that allows Ben Roethlisberger to get those receiving weapons like Smith-Schuster and, most importantly, Antonio Brown, the catches that they deserve. It helps my fantasy team personally because I've been struggling without him. And so I'm very, very glad for that. And then once we once we once we do that, it'll be great. I will say this for him personally. I think that whatever he does in his 10, 11 games or so, whatever he does in these 10, 11 games going forward, it may, help him get the money that he deserves from a team that really needs it back, i.e. the Colts. And so, this should be very interesting for the Steelers going forward. The Earl Thomas injury is kind of one of the main reasons why Le'Veon Bell's been holding out because, you want that guaranteed investment. You want that. You want the money. You want to be compensated for what you have produced, and you want to be paid your worth. And because of the Earl Thomas injury, that's kind of exactly the reason why Bell's been holding out. This makes things a lot more understanding for this team.
Yeah, hopefully, he doesn't get injured. Hopefully, he can avoid the injury bug, doesn't pull a hamstring or something like that. A lot of times these guys who hold out get these muscle injuries. So hopefully he can avoid that, stay healthy, and then, rise up into, free agency, with his body pretty fresh. And like you said, somebody who needs a running back will give him what he deserves. So we'll wrap up the NFL talk with the Week 5 marquee matchups. We have 2 3-1 teams, the Dolphins and the Bengals, facing off against each other. We're also going to have the Jaguars taking their stab at slowing down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And on Monday Night Football, my beloved Washington football team is going to travel down to New Orleans to try to slow down Drew Brees and the Saints. So, Dwayne, just kind of give a brief, which of those 3 games intrigues you the most, and some thoughts on the matchup that you're looking forward
to. Jaguars Chiefs because of the contrasting styles. You got the shutdown defense of Jacksonville against the air assault that the Chiefs have put up. So will Jalen Ramsey be able to shut down Tyreek Hill, and will they be able to allow the rest of the defense to shut down the other receiver threats on the Chiefs, as well as will we see Saxonville go into full effect, or will Patrick Mahomes neutralize that attack and be able to get the ball, continue his hot streak, and get the ball down the field? That's probably the best intriguing matchup of the week for me. I also want to see how Washington comes off the bye week against the Saints, and can they stop that run, because Mark Ingram's coming back, and Mark Ingram's coming back, and because of Mark Ingram coming back, you got the two-headed monster returning of him and Alvin Kamara. So that's going to be very interesting to see how Washington can neutralize that attack, and will they have to force Drew Brees to make magic with the arm?
I'll tell you exactly what to watch for in that Washington Saints game. Look for how well the Washington football team is running the ball in the first quarter, first half. If Adrian Peterson, Chris Thompson, if they're, maybe mixing a little bit of Alex Smith, if they're running the ball and they're getting to 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3 a lot, because it looks like Jay Gruden's thing is just running on first down. Now, he may come off the bye week and try to break some tendencies in this game. I don't know how well it's going to work. But if Adrian Peterson is running well in the first quarter, in the first half, the team through 3 games has looked their best. So I don't see why that trend would not continue against the Saints. And that would also help to keep Drew Brees and those guys on the sideline. The more that they can chew up clock with the running game, make first downs through running the ball, and just make passes.
Right.
So those are the marquee matchups for week 5. Like you as well, I'm also very interested in watching the Jaguars and the Chiefs. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of, defensive game plan the Jaguars come up with that talent, throughout the defense to try to slow down the Chiefs. But, definitely a great chess match, offense versus defense. So, we'll definitely see what happens on that one. So, Dwayne, at this point, man, I'm going to open it up to you for your final thoughts, thank yous, and shout outs.
So, final thoughts. First, thank you, Don, for having me here as always. Thank you to the CSPN for the platform and the opportunities. Shout out to my family. Shout out to Jesse. Shout out to Nabias. Shout out to all of the listeners, all of the fellow podcast hosts on the CSPN. Much love. And most importantly, the listeners. I thank you for taking the time to hear me ramble and talk about sports. It's always a treat. My final thought would have to be Gordon Hayward. It was really good to see Gordon Hayward on the court in the 2 games against the Hornets. Just seeing him make shots, run up and down the court after that gruesome ankle injury almost a year ago, opening night. It's really good to see that, the Celtics back on the court in full effect. Kyrie's back, Hayward's back, and a very, very deep team in Boston. Looking forward to that. And then my other final thought would have to just be, kind of touched on it in the baseball segment, how, starts and finishes, and it kind of just reminded me how the New York Mets started out really good and flamed out in the middle of the season, but they finished strong. And Jacob deGrom, despite having a 10-9 record, the numbers that he put up all season long 32 quality starts, 31 consecutive starts, under 3 runs, a 1.7 ERA, 250 plus strikeouts on the season. Even though if he had more run support from that team, he would probably be about 16-5 or so. But definitely Cy Young material. 48 for Cy Young. I'm all in.
All right, Dwayne, I'd like to give a shout out to you for joining me as always this week. I'd like to give a shout out to Nabias out there who's getting ready to cover some playoff baseball. So we're going to try to touch base with him and get him on an upcoming show real soon to talk about the Braves and you know how they match up in the playoffs. I'd like to give a shout out to Jesse out there. I'd like to give a shout out to everybody here on CSPN. Give a shout out to everybody who's supporting us and supporting our sponsors. Please visit our website, cspn.us. Click on Keep Our Podcast. Support our podcast, and then click on that tab, and then do whatever shopping you want through our sponsors. Please support our sponsors and help support CSPN. My final thought would be NASCAR. They took a chance, and a racetrack that is a traditional track, Charlotte Motor Speedway, and a track that they race on the oval 2 times a year, once in their playoff format. They took a chance this year, and they introduced a new style of track called the Roval, which is basically a road course which uses parts of the oval track. And it produced a great amount of suspense and drama as leading up to this thing. They tore up a lot of race cars, wrecking and trying to navigate this track. But when it came time to put on the actual show, the best drivers in the world did what they did, man, and they just basically up the stakes. It was a great show, a great race with a great finish. Jimmie Johnson in second, trying to get into not only the next round of the playoffs, but also win his first race of the season, gets into the leader, Martin Truex Jr. They both wreck out just mere feet from the finish line, and the third place driver, Ryan Blaney, gets the win. He automatically qualifies to the next round of the playoffs. This was the elimination race of the first round of the playoffs, and Jimmie Johnson, with that bold move, gets eliminated. He's one of the final 4 competitors in points that doesn't move on to the next round. So not only did he not get the win, he also didn't get to continue on to try to win his record 8th championship. So a lot of drama, a lot of excitement, a lot of unknown that really put on a great show. And like I said, the best drivers in the world. It didn't look like they were going to be able to, have control of their cars and make this anything other than a wreck fest. But they actually did more than that. So this looks like this will be something that'll be back next year. And I think I'll have to put in my request to go cover it because it was a lot of fun this year. So good job to NASCAR. Congratulations to Ryan Blaney. And we'll, be looking forward to seeing the Roval come back again next year at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So for that note, I'm Don Delarente. I've been joined by my co-host of the Libra Icon, and now you know the score. All right, my friend.
Wonderful.
I appreciate that. I'm about to go cook me some dinner while I prepare for SmackDown.
Right. Yeah, I need to get ready for that myself. So.
All right, man.
I need to get this TV out the car too. So you're going to do that.
All right, I appreciate you. Let's see. I'm off this weekend, but
I am too.
Let me check my work schedule. Let me tell you how I'm looking next week. I think next week I'm working Tuesday evening, but after that I'm free. I really think that's what it is. Yeah, Tuesday evening I'm working, but after that, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Actually, I'm off on that Thursday and Friday.
I'm off this coming weekend anyway, so.
Well, I was trying to maybe let the game play out.
Yeah, that's right.
Get back into like a Tuesday, Wednesday groove again, or Thursday, Friday. Just kind of let some stuff happen.
If I can move my schedule on Thursday or Friday, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Just keep me informed.
All right, we'll do.
All right, brother.
All right, later.
Later.